Donald Trump had built a reputation as a businessman who never backed down, a leader who thrived in high-stakes negotiations and turned obstacles into opportunities. He had faced skeptics before, had been underestimated countless times, and had always emerged victorious. But on this particular day, something happened that no one, least of all those who knew his relentless drive, could have predicted. It all started with what should have been a routine transaction. Trump, a man accustomed to commanding boardrooms and making multi-million-dollar deals, approached a bank with a proposal that should have been a simple business arrangement. He had the vision, the capital, and the strategy. But what he did not expect was outright rejection. The bank, confident in its authority and unimpressed by his presence, dismissed his request. The rejection wasn't just procedural, it was personal. There was a tone of condescension in their response, a smugness that suggested they believed they had the upper hand. Perhaps they thought he had overreached. Perhaps they assumed that for once Trump had met an obstacle too great to overcome. What they did not realize was that telling Donald Trump no was never the end of a conversation. It was the beginning of a battle. The air in the room shifted. Those who witnessed the exchange might not have understood what was happening at that moment, but history would later prove that this was a turning point, not just for Trump, but for the very institution that had dared to reject him. What happened next would not only redefine the deal at hand, but would send shockwaves through the business world. The decision the bank made that day, the arrogance they displayed in underestimating the man in front of them, would come back to haunt them in ways they could not have imagined. Because Donald Trump did not just walk away, he did not accept defeat. Instead, he did something that would leave the financial world speechless. And as the pieces of his next move fell into place, it became clear that this was not just another deal. It was about proving a point. It was about showing that no matter the odds, no matter the opposition, Donald Trump would always find a way to win. Those who doubted him would soon regret it. The world was about to witness one of the most legendary turnarounds in business history. If you believe in leadership, power, and second chances, this is the place for you. Hit that like button, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to never miss an inspiring Trump story. Donald Trump had walked into that bank fully prepared. He knew the value of his proposition, understood the numbers better than anyone in the room, and had built his career on turning deals that others overlooked into massive successes. Yet despite all of this, the bank rejected him, not just with hesitation or skepticism, but with absolute finality, as if they had already made up their minds before he had even walked through the door. The rejection was swift and decisive. There was no attempt to negotiate, no counteroffer, no interest in discussing the finer details of what could have been a mutually beneficial arrangement. It was a flat-out refusal, delivered with an air of confidence that suggested the bank believed it held all the power. But why? Had they truly miscalculated Trump's financial standing? It seemed unlikely. He was already a well-established businessman with a track record that spoke for itself. He had secured financing for far greater ventures, had built an empire from the ground up, and had never been one to take unnecessary risks. If there was one thing the financial world knew about Donald Trump, it was that he understood money, how to make it, how to invest it, and how to multiply it. Perhaps then this was not about money at all. Perhaps the bank had other motives. Was there an underlying political or strategic reason for their decision? Trump had long been a disruptor in the world of business, a man who did things his own way, without bending to the traditional power structures of corporate America. He had never been one to rely on old alliances or play by the unspoken rules of the elite. Was this rejection an attempt to block him, to keep him out of a space they didn't want him to enter? Or was it simply arrogance, a miscalculation from those who believed that even someone as formidable as Trump could be dismissed with a simple refusal? Whatever their reasoning, one thing was certain: the bank had made a grave mistake. They believed they could say no to Trump, and that would be the end of it. They thought they could turn him away, that he would accept defeat, walk out quietly and move on. They did not realize that for Donald Trump, a rejection was never the end of the conversation. It was the beginning of a much bigger game, and they had just made themselves part of a story that would soon shake the financial world. Donald Trump was not a man who accepted rejection lightly. Throughout his career, he had faced obstacles, doubters, and critics who underestimated his ability to turn setbacks into victories. He had built his empire by defying expectations, by seeing opportunity where others saw failure, and by refusing to accept no as a final answer. So when the bank arrogantly dismissed his proposal, they didn't just reject a business deal, they challenged the very essence of who Trump was. At that moment, he could have walked away. He had the connections, the influence, and the financial strength to take his business elsewhere. There were plenty of other institutions that would have gladly financed a project backed by a man with his track record. But that wasn't how Trump operated. This wasn't just about money, it was about principle. It was about proving a point. It was about making sure that no one ever thought they could simply dismiss him without consequences. For Trump, this rejection wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger. In his mind, a plan was already forming. If the bank thought they could block him, he would make a move so bold, so unexpected, that they would regret ever having underestimated him. He wasn't just going to find a way around their rejection. He was going to make them wish they had never crossed him in the first place. He knew that the best revenge was not anger, not retaliation, but success on a scale so massive that it would leave his opponents speechless. If they didn't want to be part of his vision, then they would soon find themselves watching helplessly as he built something far greater than they had ever imagined. Trump had faced resistance before, but every time he had turned it into an advantage. This time would be no different. The bank had slammed a door in his face, but what they didn't realize was that they had just given him the motivation to build an entire empire right next to them. They thought they had won. They thought they had the power, but they had just made the biggest mistake of their careers, because Trump was about to give them an answer they would never forget. Donald Trump never forgot a challenge, nor did he ever let an insult go unanswered. The moment the bank rejected him, they sealed their fate, because Trump was not a man who simply moved on. He was a strategist, a visionary, someone who saw beyond the immediate and into the long game. He didn't just react, he calculated. As he left that meeting, his mind was already at work. The bank had humiliated him, dismissed him as if he were just another businessman to be turned away without consequence. That was their mistake. They had not simply rejected a deal, they had issued a challenge. And if there was one thing history had proven, it was that challenging Donald Trump was a costly decision. He could have easily gone to another financial institution, secured the capital he needed, and proceeded with his project elsewhere. But that was too easy, too predictable, too ordinary. And Trump did not operate on ordinary terms. No, this required something far more powerful, something that would not just prove them wrong, but would leave them in utter shock. Then it hit him. A plan so audacious, so brilliantly executed, that the bank would be left in absolute disbelief. He wasn't just going to continue with his project, he was going to turn the tables completely, take control of the very thing they thought they had power over, and leave them with no choice but to regret every single decision they had made. The arrogance of the bank had blinded them to the reality of who they were dealing with. They thought they could shut him down, deny him access, and move on as if nothing had happened. But they had underestimated the relentless nature of Donald Trump. His plan would not just be about winning, it would be about domination. It would be about making a statement so undeniable that it would echo across the business world. He was about to turn their rejection into the biggest mistake of their careers. And by the time they realized what was happening, it would already be too late. Donald Trump never accepted defeat, and he certainly never forgot a challenge. When the bank dismissed him, they thought they had the final word. They believed they had blocked his path, denied him access to the resources he needed, and reinforced their own position of power. But what they failed to realize was that Trump never needed their approval. He only needed an opportunity to prove them wrong. He took their rejection and turned it into fuel. While the bank sat comfortably, thinking they had closed the door on him, he was already orchestrating a counter-strike that would completely redefine the game. The first step was securing the capital. The bank had assumed that by rejecting him, he would struggle to find the necessary funding elsewhere. They were wrong. Trump's network was vast, his reputation undeniable, and his ability to negotiate unmatched. Within weeks, he had not only found a new financial backer, but he had secured a deal far superior to the one he had originally proposed. But that was just the beginning. Trump wasn't interested in simply moving forward. He wanted to turn the tables so dramatically that the bank would be forced to acknowledge their mistake in the most humiliating way possible. He saw an opening, a way to not just outmaneuver them, but to make them completely irrelevant in the process. His new deal wasn't just about financing the original project. It was about changing the entire playing field. Instead of operating within the confines of what the bank had denied him, he expanded the vision, transformed the scope, and created something even bigger than before. When the bank executives finally realized what was happening, it was too late. They had expected Trump to be just another businessman walking away after a rejection, but now they were witnessing a masterclass in power, influence, and strategic dominance. The deal they had arrogantly dismissed was now unfolding without them at a scale that exceeded anything they could have predicted. Trump had not only proven them wrong, he had left them watching from the sidelines, powerless to change the outcome. And in that moment, as the full weight of his actions became clear, one undeniable truth emerged. The only mistake bigger than underestimating Donald Trump is thinking you can stop him. Donald Trump's journey is filled with resilience, bold decisions, and unforgettable moments. Stay inspired. Like this video, drop a comment below, and subscribe to be part of this movement. Donald Trump had spent his entire career proving one thing: those who underestimated him always lived to regret it. The bank had dismissed him, rejected his proposal with arrogance, and assumed that was the end of the story. But Trump was never one to walk away from a challenge. Instead of backing down, he turned their rejection into the greatest power move of his career. While they sat comfortably, convinced they had blocked him, Trump had been working behind the scenes, assembling something far greater than anyone could have predicted. He had secured his funding elsewhere on terms that benefited him even more than the original deal. He had expanded his vision, transforming a setback into a strategic opportunity. But there was still one final move left to play. Trump knew that true victory was not just about succeeding despite rejection. It was about flipping the entire situation so dramatically that those who had doubted him had no choice but to recognize his dominance. And so, with his financing secured, his plans finalized, and his strategy perfectly executed, he made the move that no one saw coming. He bought the very institution that had denied him. The bank that had once turned him away now belonged to him. The same board members who had confidently dismissed his request now found themselves answering to him. The employees who had once treated him as an outsider now stood under his leadership. For Trump, this was more than a business transaction. It was a statement, a demonstration of his relentless determination, his refusal to accept defeat, and his ability to turn even the greatest insult into a position of unquestionable power. No one could have predicted it. The very institution that had once been his obstacle had now become his asset. He had not just proven them wrong, he had rewritten the entire narrative, ensuring that every single person involved in his rejection would never forget the name Donald Trump. Because now they weren't just dealing with him, they were working for him. The moment the deal was finalized, the financial world was turned upside down. What had started as a dismissive rejection by a powerful bank had transformed into one of the greatest reversals of fortune in modern business history. The news spread like wildfire. Financial analysts, journalists, and industry leaders scrambled to understand how a man who had been rejected by a bank just weeks earlier had now positioned himself as its owner. It was not just a business move, it was a lesson in power, strategy, and dominance. Headlines flooded newspapers and television screens. Trump stuns Wall Street, acquires bank that rejected him. The ultimate power move. Trump now owns his former detractors. Donald Trump turns rejection into victory and shocks the financial world. Reporters rush to cover every detail, trying to dissect how a simple business rejection had escalated into one of the boldest moves in history. Analysts on television panels debated whether this was a calculated masterstroke or sheer audacity. Some couldn't believe it had happened, while others simply admitted that this was exactly the kind of move that only Donald Trump could pull off. Social media exploded. Supporters hailed the move as legendary, calling it the greatest comeback in corporate history. Memes, discussions, and videos dissecting every part of Trump's strategy dominated online platforms. But for the executives of the bank, the reality of the situation was sinking in fast. They had dismissed him, assumed he was just another businessman who could be turned away, never imagining that the very deal they refused would end with them working under his authority. No one could deny it now. Trump had done the impossible. The world had just been given a front-row seat to the most powerful message in business history: no. And challenges Donald Trump without consequences. The moment the deal was finalized and the news broke, panic set in among the executives of the bank. The very institution that had so confidently rejected Donald Trump now found itself in the most humiliating position imaginable, answering to the man they had tried to shut out. The realization hit them like a tidal wave. Their rejection had not only failed to stop Trump, but it had fueled one of the greatest power shifts in financial history. They had underestimated him, assumed they held the leverage, and now they were watching as he took control of the very institution they thought he could never touch. The boardroom was in chaos. Executives who had once laughed at the idea of Trump securing funding were now frantically calling emergency meetings. Some tried to negotiate, to soften the impact, but it was too late. Trump had outmaneuvered them, and now they were at his mercy. For the employees, the shift in leadership was nothing short of stunning. Some of them had been in the very room where Trump was rejected. They had witnessed the arrogance of the decision-makers, had seen how he was dismissed without a second thought. Now, those same executives were scrambling to figure out their next move, realizing that they had underestimated the wrong man. Resignations began to flood in. Those who had once sat comfortably in their positions, believing they were untouchable, now saw no way forward under Trump's leadership. They had mocked him, and now they had to answer to him. Some tried to save face, hoping to secure favor under the new ownership, but Trump was not one to forget. The humiliation was absolute. The market watched closely. Other financial institutions, competitors, and even political figures took note. This wasn't just a business transaction anymore. It was a shift in power, a statement that echoed far beyond the walls of the bank. Donald Trump had turned their arrogance into his greatest weapon. The same people who had once seen themselves as gatekeepers were now forced to acknowledge that the gates belonged to Trump all along. And for the world watching, there was only one undeniable truth. No one who stands in the way of Donald Trump escapes unscathed. Every great leader leaves a legacy. Be part of the conversation. Smash that like button, share your opinion in the comments, and make sure to subscribe for more powerful Trump insights. Throughout his life, Donald Trump had faced opposition from Powerful institutions, political elites, and corporate gatekeepers who believed they could block his path. Time and time again, he proved them wrong. But this moment, this masterstroke of strategy and resilience, was different. This wasn't just another business victory. This was a lesson for those who thought power belonged to them, for those who assumed that status, wealth, and influence alone could dictate who succeeded and who failed. The bank had tried to dictate the terms to Trump. They had made the mistake of thinking that a simple rejection would be enough to stop him. They had underestimated the force of sheer willpower, determination, and strategic genius. Trump had never been the kind of man to accept defeat. For him, obstacles were simply puzzles to be solved, challenges to be conquered. He understood something that many in the corporate world failed to grasp, that true power does not come from institutions, but from the unshakable belief in one's ability to shape their own destiny. The lesson was now written in history. No matter how many people stand in his way, no matter how many doors are closed, no matter how many times the system tries to push him out, Donald Trump finds a way. He had rewritten the rules, proving that success is not given by those who sit in boardrooms. It is taken by those who refuse to be denied. He didn't just win, he turned rejection into domination. He took the power that was denied to him and made it his own. And now, the world knew what his rivals had learned the hard way. Never, under any circumstances, underestimate Donald Trump. Donald Trump's journey has never been one of ease or quiet acceptance. He has faced opposition from every direction: powerful elites, corrupt institutions, and those who underestimated his ability to fight back. Yet, time after time, he has shown that no rejection is final, no obstacle is insurmountable, and no opponent is too powerful to be defeated. What happened with this bank was more than a business transaction. It was a demonstration of what separates those who control their destiny from those who allow others to dictate their fate. The world witnessed something extraordinary, a masterclass in resilience, intelligence, and strategic thinking. Trump was given a simple no, but instead of walking away, he redefined the game. He proved that the only real power in business, politics, and life is the power of persistence, vision, and the refusal to accept defeat. He turned rejection into domination. He transformed a setback into a legacy. And in doing so, he sent a message that reverberated across industries, media platforms, and power structures worldwide. If there is one undeniable truth that history has now recorded, it is this: no matter how much they try to stop him, no matter how much they try to silence him, no matter how many times they say no, Donald Trump will always find a way to win. Now that you have seen how Trump turned the impossible into reality, what do you think? Would you have done the same? Would you have walked away? Or would you have fought back? Comment below and let your voice be heard. And if you believe that this story needs to be told, if you believe that the world should see what true determination looks like, then share this message. Let others witness the power of relentless ambition, strategic brilliance, and the refusal to accept defeat. Like this video, subscribe for more legendary stories about Trump, and stay tuned, because this is just the beginning. The fight for truth, success, and power never ends, and neither does Donald Trump. Strength, strategy, and vision. If these qualities inspire you, you're in the right place. Show your support by liking this video, commenting your thoughts, and subscribing for more.